Good afternoon, all of you. I'm Caroline Noakes, the MP for Romsey and Southampton North, and one of the other deputy speakers. And just to demonstrate that there's a geographic spread of deputy speakers, I want to welcome you all this afternoon, but particularly those from the South East. The Youth Parliament will now consider the fourth motion of the day, political literacy. The full motion is printed on the order paper. I call the Member of the Youth Parliament from West Scotland to move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. When people hear the word politics, it is in their nature to immediately assume that party politics is being discussed, as opposed to the general public's good. However, the meaning of politics goes beyond this common misconception. Political literacy can be defined as where a person has the knowledge, skills and attitude to allow them both to understand and know how to engage in public events and debates. As I'm standing in a room among so many passionate young people, it is safe to assume that we all possess a fairly good amount of it because of our personal interests. However, which is commendable in absence of equalist teaching. However, that is not an expectation of how all young people should be introduced to political literacy due to its inaccessibility. I would like to emphasise the word standardised in the motion. What is being sought here is a levelling of the academic field amongst all young people from different socio-economic backgrounds to be able to meaningfully be part of the proposed classes, so that that sentiment can transcend into the adulthood and our society, where that knowledge learned in the classrooms would be put to good use. Democracy is our fundamental right. However, there's been a decline in its support, and that is to our peril. We have been so accustomed to its existence that we fail to act upon its defence when it's under threat. And there is no better way to do such by installing a belief so important and creating the appropriate space for them to critically develop their own opinions of what that should look like. Failure to do so will result in the attack of our rights, something that people would not be aware of without our knowledge. There cannot be a price put on education, morality, or passion. To end apathy of our society runs, we must instill its importance in the classroom. By prioritising this motion, we are preserving and legitimising our democratic process, the core of our society. I urge the members to carefully think of the advantages that it will bring to our nations and to look beyond the initial words presented. This is not a battle of what party is most prominent in the classroom. It's about being able as a young person to criticise, evaluate and, most importantly, understand their policies and also the system they operate in.
The general debate is now open, and I call the MYP in the cream jacket here.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Zara, representing the young people for Newham. Young people in the UK are being left in the dark when it comes to politics. Without a standardised level of political and democratic education, how can we expect the next generation to engage, vote and lead? We demand a future where every young person, no matter where they live, has access to the knowledge and critical thinking skills needed to navigate locally, nationally and globally in politics. A democracy without education is a democracy at risk. It's time to make political literacy a core part of our education system. The future of our country depends on it. Thank you.
Can I call the MYP in the turquoisey tie, please?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Politics affects every aspect of our lives, from our education and healthcare to jobs and rights. Yet many young people feel disconnected from it and uninformed about it because they haven't had the right tools to understand it. That is why all young people in the UK must have access to a standardised level of political literacy and democratic education. It would empower young people to engage in local, national and global issues. They would develop the critical thinking skills necessary to assess policies, spot misinformation and hold leaders accountable. When people understand how democracy works, they are more likely to vote and shape the society they live in. Some argue Adding political education into the curriculum may take time away from other core subjects. There are also concerns about potential bias. Others suggest political and democratic awareness should come from families and communities, not schools. Ultimately, democracy only works when citizens are informed. If future generations are to be aware and active participants, we must ensure every young person receives an unbiased, high-quality political education. The question is, can we really now afford not to prioritise this?
The NYP in the back row. In the suit. Nope.
One criticism of this is that young people just aren't that keen. And I think it's the politicians that aren't too keen to speak to us. I went to a hustings event in my local constituency, and I was the youngest there by about 50 years. And no one really wanted to speak to me until I got up and spoke to them. And then when I went to a group of 7 to 10-year-olds who I held a political literacy event for, oh, they were talking. They loved it. They were giggling, they were laughing, and they were planning their futures. They loved a debate. They loved being able to talk about their futures. So why aren't we prioritising this as their education? They should be able to get qualifications in political literacy. They should be able to understand how their countries ran. And currently we are neglecting not just our future, but our now. We need to make sure that children understand the importance of politics and don't think that it's just ignoring them, because currently it is. Thank you.
I call the NYP 3 rows back in the pale blue suit who's just sat down. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Bobby Forbes and I'm the NYP for Cumberland. Our education system teaches us to analyse Macbeth's guilt and to solve calculus equations, yet political literacy is overlooked. Just as Macbeth is haunted by his actions, governments must face the consequences of their decisions. Without proper political education, young people cannot scrutinise policies or hold their leaders accountable. Madam Deputy Speakers, young farmers are just one of the groups of young people who deserve this education. The countryside is not just a place for a scenic walk, it is the backbone of our nation. No farmers, no food, no future. Young farmers are already facing challenges and they, like all young people, must understand how policies impact their future. I urge this House to support young politically engaged electorate in securing the future of our democracy. Thank you.
The NYP from Wales, the 2nd row back, right at the far end.
Deputy Speaker. Every year, approximately 25 million people visit the city of Westminster. Many come to admire its iconic landmarks, Westminster Abbey, Buckingham Palace, and of course, these very Houses of Parliament. But these buildings are more than just tourist attractions, Madam Deputy Speaker. They are the heart of our democracy, symbols of centuries of debates, decision-making, and the rights we often take for granted. They aren't a mere photo opportunity. Yet political engagement in this country is alarmingly low. Only 23% of the British public consider themselves engaged Democrats, a figure that plummets further among young people, disabled people and women. If so many people feel disconnected from the very system that governs them, I'm so sorry, hold on. I'm sorry. If so many people feel disconnected from the very system that governs them, how can we expect them to actively take part in it? A lack of understanding about how our institution works fuels misinformation, misinterpretation and ultimately mistrust. If we fail to equip future generations with the knowledge and confidence to participate in democracy, we risk further disengagement. We must ensure that every citizen, regardless of background, has the tools to engage meaningfully in political life. Because democracy does not function on apathy, it thrives on awareness, participation and empowerment. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Maeve Carey and I'm representing the constituency of Gateshead. It was only when I was 16 that I realised that in my constituency there was a local youth council. For context, by that time I had seen umpteen elections. My parents had both worked themselves to the bone during the COVID pandemic and I had gone to school and engaged in political life as a young person who did care about politics. But I didn't know what I could do about it. I didn't know how the theory and the news connected to me. And I believe that the gap that was in my life that led me to feel so disillusioned with politics was education. I come from a constituency where the voter turnout was 58%. And from my life in education, I know that if something becomes a habit when you're young, it is almost impossible to break when you are older. That's why I think political education is so important, because if you do not engage young people when they have the ability to be spoken to in a classroom and engaged with on a personal level, I don't see an opportunity that has the same outreach. When I think of democracy, the word that comes to my mind is consent. And as we sit here today, we are elected representatives. But I ask you, what does that election mean if the people that you are representing do not know what you are doing, does not know what the Mother of Parliament represents, and what they can do to be politically engaged? We are all exceptional people in that we have stood here, but unfortunately we are also exceptional because we break the trend of young people not understanding politics. As we've been given this opportunity to stand here today, I ask you, which children in the classroom do you think doesn't also deserve this right? Thank you.
NYP from London in red suit.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Zarin and I am Youth MP for Camden. In the 2019 election, only 47% of eligible young people voted. We've seen the headlines. Young people don't vote. They don't care about politics. They don't participate. But we are in a room filled with young people who would vote, who do care, who do participate. The people in this room are a testament to the fact that this generalization is wrong, and it's a generalization that would be debunked entirely if we gave young people more access to political and democratic education. It's difficult to care about politics when you do not understand its importance and role in shaping our society, economy, and lives. It's difficult to vote when you do not understand the issues you are voting on and when healthy political debate is not nurtured in schools. It's impossible to say that young people aren't being disenfranchised whilst they are still being denied a political education. Thank you.
The NYP from the southwest, right in the back row in the pink shirt, pinkish shirt.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Rocky Travers and I represent Plymouth. Today I want to talk to you about the link between every single issue that we have brought today before you. The link that combines all of these issues is poverty, especially youth poverty. The poverty cycle, as we have discussed evidently today, is a vicious and atrocious one that many young families struggle to get out of. By increasing the level of political literacy, we break that barrier to education to those who need it most, and we break that glass ceiling for women and for all genders to become equal to those who stand above them. Political education will also increase young children's critical thinking, which will future-proof our society against hateful ideology. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to take a second to emphasise the second part of this motion, to improve engagement on a local, national and international level. We cannot afford to educate young people in a vacuum. From the crisis in Gaza, the violence in the DRC, the war in Sudan and the devastation in Ukraine, for many young people, these are not distant realities. These are not distant events, but daily realities. Yet without standardised political education, too many young people are left disconnected, overwhelmed or misinformed. We should not feel detached from global crises simply because they aren't happening on our doorstep. The suffering of families 2,200 miles away is no less real, and a standardised level of education ensures that these tragedies are more than just headlines. Political literacy is not just about policy. It's about building empathy, responsibility and action. It cannot be a luxury based on where you live or which school you attend. It should be a universal right available to every young person. And while this motion is incredibly important, I cannot include without addressing the comments made earlier about forgetting about free transport and about free period products. This is a dangerous rhetoric. Today, no issue is less valuable than another. The superiority of issues is what has and will continue to exacerbate period poverty and the issues we have been talking about today. And continuing looking at it this way will only lead to further damage to our society. Thank you.
The NYP from the Midlands in the back row.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Saban Abbas and I'm honoured to represent the constituency of Nottinghamshire. I firmly believe political literacy is imperative to the functioning of society and should be afforded by everyone, regardless of their socio-economic background. A standardised approach to political education can help bridge the gap in political knowledge between different socio-economic groups, and it's vital in ensuring equal representation and equal engagement in the political hemisphere. By implementing a uniform curriculum across schools, we can foster political literacy and combat the current disillusionment and discontent between young people and politics, which will in turn produce a higher voter turnout in democratic processes. The very notion of providing all young people with a standardised level of political education and literacy is essential for the development of critical skills and political engagement. It equips young people with the skills to navigate the political landscape, promotes equality and civic knowledge, and combats political apathy. This proactive approach will cultivate a generation that is not only politically aware, but also actively engaged in shaping their future, our future. Thank you.
The NYP from Scotland in the blue tie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Conor MacLeod and I'm a representative for Central Scotland. I'm in strong support of this motion because a strong democracy needs informed young people. If we expect young people to take a part of democratic decisions, they need the knowledge to do so. In Scotland, modern studies already takes part in political literacy. With modern studies, if I didn't mention there. But we must need a united kingdom, not a divided kingdom. Every young person, no matter where they live, should deserve political literacy, with some areas throughout the UK having votes for 16. I consulted teachers and they agree. Education should empower young people, not push agendas. And political literacy builds critical thinking, responsibility and real engagement. So, young people, it's time to see an education reform in our country so we can have the better opportunity for young people to have votes for 16 with better knowledge and better decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to first start off by giving off a personal anecdote. When I walked into English lesson, I think last week, I walked in and I saw an article about Keir Starmer on the board. And I pointed out straight away, being like, oh, that's Keir Starmer. Just to be met with someone being like, who? That shouldn't be right. We need our education. A famous quote from Nelson Mandela says that education is the most powerful weapon which can be used to change the world. Why should our young people, especially under 16s, be sent into the battlefield of politics without having the unbiased and vital education that they need? Education is our human right. Young people consume social media as their form of news. Social media is riddled with fake news. Our young people need to be educated and have that weapon to make a change. We need to be equipped with essential critical thinking skills to be able to differ facts from lies. Thank you.
Thank you, NYP from Northern Ireland in the cream jacket.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Monia Ahmed and I'm representing North Antrim today. Political education in UK schools is lacking, leaving many young people unprepared to engage in democracy. Understanding how the government works, knowing how to vote, how laws are made, how policies are implemented in daily life, these things are essential. Yet they're not a core part of the curriculum, and when they are, schools do not incorporate these into our lessons. Without this knowledge, so many young people can struggle to make informed decisions, whether voting, debating issues, or holding politicians accountable. A survey which I ran in my local area found that 67% of people felt school did not prepare them for political engagement. With Labour's commitment to lowering the voting age to 16, ensuring young people are politically informed is more important than ever. A strong democracy relies on the informed public. If political education were given the same importance as other subjects, young people would be better equipped to participating in shaping their future. Thank you.
Throwback right at the end.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm Sammy Rabideau and I represent Bury, Greater Manchester. I believe that above all others, this motion should be prioritised as one of our campaigns for UKYP. In inner city areas like much of Bury and Greater Manchester, young people face rising poverty, underfunded public services and a lack of opportunity. The ability to engage in politics is essential. Far too often, deprived communities are overlooked by decision makers. But how can we challenge this if young people are not equipped with the knowledge or understanding of the institutions that shape our lives? Without a standardised level of political education, our generation is powerless in the face of inequality. This is about more than engagement, it's about empowerment. It's about ensuring that every young person, no matter where they live in the UK, can analyse policies and challenge injustice through having their voice heard at every level of democracy. Political literacy is not optional. It's a foundation of a fairer society. Thank you.
NYP from London at the end of by the gangway, 3 rows back.
Thank you, Deputy Madam Speaker. Every day decisions are made that shape our futures, our education, our jobs, our rights. Yet so many young people feel powerless to change them. In the 2014 Scottish independence referendum, 16 and 17-year-olds were granted the right to vote. 75% of these young voters turned out to cast their ballots, a rate significantly higher than their counterparts of 18 to 24-year-olds at 54%. This clearly shows the eagerness of political participation that so many young people across the UK are willing to demonstrate, and are willing to also take part in political discourse and action. In an era of social media misinformation, false news, it is fundamental to provide quality political literacy to young people, not only to help them build critical thinking skills, but also to help them distinguish facts from propaganda. Young people who are politically literate will foster leadership, decision-making, and make their voices and their concerns heard. Political education isn't optional, it is essential.
We have the NYP from the North East with the cream blouse on.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Emily and I'm an NYP for Northumberland. Youth Parliament has been the world of good to me, but not all young people get this opportunity. When I was first elected into Youth Parliament, I barely knew anything about politics. Most people my age still know nothing. Having standardised level of political education is just as important as learning about other topics, such as drug and alcohol abuse, as we are all going to come into contact with it at some point. If we are wanting votes at 16, we are going to need this education for students whose schools do not participate in this experience. By providing political education, it helps pupils form their own opinions and prepares them for later in life. Thank you.
For the NYP from the Yorkshire and the Humber in the back row at the end, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Deputy Speaker, members of Youth Parliament. I'm Emperor David Ikechukwu, and I'm here to stand as a representative for Kingston upon Hull, a city where young people are fighting for a fairer future, yet time and time again, we are told to wait for our turn. Well, our turn is now. There is a dangerous gap in the education system. We are taught Pythagoras' theorem, but we are not taught how a general election works. We learn how to identify the sides of magnets, but we don't learn how to scrutinize political parties. And then, when young people don't vote, politicians turn around and blame us. How can we expect young people to engage in politics if we don't even teach them how it works? Political education in the UK is a postcode lottery. Some schools teach it well, while some barely even mention it. This leaves many young people without the knowledge to participate meaningfully in democracy. A lack of political education fuels misinformation. We need to equip young people with skills to think critically, challenge fake news, and make informed decisions. Countries like Denmark and Sweden have political education, and the youth voter turnout is significantly higher than in the UK. Would you rather have an informed, engaged young citizen of people, or a generation who don't trust the system of government because they don't understand it? I guess not. So, prioritize political literacy now. Thank you.
NYP from the Midlands.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My name is Emily Richards, representing Staffordshire. Since the government's manifesto already commits to lowering the voting age before the next election, despite its omission from the King's speech, I urge those who were previously looking to vote for the first policy to listen carefully. The call for enhanced political education is vital to ensure the government's plan works effectively. At present, social media serves as a principal source of political information for many young people, influencing their views more through superficial entertainment than through substantive discourse. This is not a failing on their part, but rather an indication of an educational void. We must equip young people with the skills to critically assess information, engage in reasoned debate, and participate meaningfully in our democracy. Therefore, given that the government is already moving towards votes at 16, we must ask ourselves, should we focus on an issue already gaining political momentum, or should we channel our energies towards matters that are being overlooked? I ask you all to consider voting for this policy in place for the first. We do not want the final vote to be split between these similar policies when only one covers what is left to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, doing my research on political literacy, it's as if we've allowed this lack of political education to become the new norm, generation after generation. Young people are left informed and they follow in the footsteps of their parents or their peers, unaware of how their voices shape the future. A staggering 70% of young people don't even know the name of their local MP, and even a third have never been taught about the political system that governs their lives within school. This is blatant exclusion. We live in a world where decisions are made by the front row of the main political party every single day. And without political literacy, we can't expect young people to navigate and challenge these issues. We should have the opportunity to not just challenge, but to challenge effectively. So therefore, to build a truly informed electorate, we need to equip young people with the tools to understand, question, and engage with the political systems now. Thank you.
I now call the Member of Youth Parliament from Kent to conclude the debate.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would you let someone drive you around before they had taken a lesson? Would you let a doctor operate on you without having seen a scalpel? So why should we let the next generation grow up to be ill-informed and unprepared to vote? Young people must understand their rights in order to protect them. They must understand systems in order to change them. And they must be able to make an educated vote in order to empower their vote. However, the current state of political education denies them this, preventing the average citizen from holding politicians to account. Many amongst the general public do not yield the weapons of knowledge and truth. I mean, the curriculum places significant emphasis on English literacy so that we can thrive. Why can't political literacy be treated the same when it is essential for letting our beliefs and values thrive too? Not only this, a lack of political education is denying you your rights. The UK is a signatory of the UN Conventions on the Rights of the Child, which includes the obligation of making young people's rights widely known. We can always learn from Scotland, where the convention is implemented in domestic law and where the Scottish Government is actively taking steps to integrate rights education. It paid off for them, with a third of the gold awards distributed by the UNICEF's Rights Respecting Schools UK scheme going to Scottish schools, despite having a pupil population magnitude smaller than England's. If they can manage, the rest of the UK has no excuse for not following suit. If young people are enabled to know their rights by the UK government, maybe they would feel empowered to have their voices heard. This hits at the heart of this motion. Education must give young people the toolkit they need to create change in the world and to take up space with confidence and conviction. That is why I urge you to vote in favour of political education as our priority campaign, so that we can not only hold governments and decision makers to account for not properly providing young people their rights, we can work with them to be the vanguard for a new generation and able to better society as we know it. To be those who worked so that those who came after could not simply imagine change, they could create it. Thank you.
Can I thank all members who contributed to that debate for the quality of their contributions. I'm sorry I couldn't get more of you in the time allotted. The Youth Parliament will now consider the fifth and final motion of the day, period dignity. The full motion is printed on the order paper. But can I say a particular request? I spent 4.5 years as chair of the Women and Equalities Select Committee in this place. We considered this issue several times, but I'd be particularly delighted if Hampshire, which has always produced a very high quality of MYP, could manage to find me a speaker in this debate. It's quite okay to wink, smile, nod at me if you're one of the MYPs from Hampshire. But can I call the Member of the Youth Parliament from Manchester to move the motion?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Mothers, daughters, sisters and friends, we all know someone who has experienced the damaging effects of period poverty and the extent of harm that it can cause on both mental and physical health. If many women across the UK endure this struggle, then why should they be forced to do so in silence? Period poverty is not just a woman's issue, it is a societal failure, a failure that has impacted the lives of millions and a failure that must be resolved. The cost of living crisis has increased the price of menstrual products, proving to be unaffordable for many across the UK and only further exacerbated by the lack of support from schools and youth services to establish a regular supply of period products and support in various situations, such as even providing extra clothing. A child's economic background should never dictate their access to good quality menstrual products, yet for too many in the UK, access to these products is a privilege and not a right, evident by WaterAid's research into how 40% of young women struggle with the financial burden added to their caregiver. Should a young person really be forced to make that choice between their childhood and health? Period poverty is not just a financial burden. It is a barrier to education, to opportunity, and to basic human dignity. Why, in 2025, do we continue to treat period products as a luxury? Public spaces offer free access to soap and water, but whenever the question of including period products as a part of basic public hygiene arises, institutions and politicians remain silent. We must invest in the health and well-being of young women across the UK, moving to eradicate the years of inaction that have allowed this injustice to persist. The UK Youth Parliament must understand the seriousness of this issue and move to eradicate any areas of injustice that have persisted in the past, and campaign for education to remove thoughts of shame and invest in free period products in public spaces. I look forward to hearing the debate on this motion. Thank you.